There is no official patch notes as of right now, but in this video, I'm going to show you all the changes that I've been able to find, at least the ones that I think they're going to be the most relevant in terms of your gameplay and your wipe progression. So without further ado, let's get into the video. First one is going to be the Flea Market. This is the biggest change in my opinion because we went from level 10 requirement to a level 20 requirement. And outside of how you or I may feel about that change, what does that mean for us as the players? Well, I think what we're going to have to do is sort of adapt to this idea of loot hoarding. Since it's going to take us longer to grind to get that level requirement, things like, for example, the lucky scav junk box that you unlock at level 13 on Therapist, assuming you do all our quests to level her up, you can buy it for like 1,000,000+ rubles. And it used to be you would have level 10 by then, and you could sell a bunch of things. Like you would play the wipe, right? You would hoard all your stuff, and then you would list a bunch of things on the flea market to buy the junk box because it gives you a ton of space to keep putting loot in to, you know, sell on the flea market. So now that's going to be more of a challenge to sort of build up that cash to get that junk box, especially if you're a standard account player like myself with small stash size. One other thing is like gear is going to be really important. Any like good armor, good ammo, you're just finding it in raid and hoarding it. It's going to be of really good value to you, especially like modding your gun as you like survive multiple raids as you get parts for it. So definitely the wipe is going to be the grindy part of it, I guess, getting to that level 20 stage until you can like just sell all your goods and found and raid stuff. It's going to be more of a struggle for sure, for sure. The other thing is it's going to sort of affect the economy. So it used to be like in the old level 10 flea market, hoses, corrugated hoses were like a really hot ticket item. Because people needed them for their hideout. They wanted to, you know, create their level 1 lavatory, and then they wanted to start producing, and then upgrade to the level 2 lavatory so they could start producing hoses to sell down to the other people who were just, unlike the flea market, wanted to do the same exact thing. So it's kind of shift that up. I don't know what the next upward shift is going to be, if you will. Off the top of my head, maybe like pressure gauges, xenomorphs, or like the water collector or boost generator. Maybe still like nails, nuts and bolts, things you need for barters, like stuff to barter for a sick case or a docs case. So just keep that in mind when you're starting to hoard stuff. Try to think about some of the more items you would need around level 20 as you're progressing up there. So that way you can save those items and then sell them for a profit on the flea market when the demand increases significantly. And with that, now I'm going to tell you about Scav Karma and how it works. So basically, when you kill a scav as a scav, when you use your scav, right, you lose points. I think you lose, I have like an image on the screen. I think you lose like 0.02 with reputation with vents. We don't really know the exact details of it all. My advice to you would be, if you have something on your scav that you feel like you cannot take a chance on, then just shoot whatever you see. You know, shoot first, ask questions later, I guess. Until we get the full details, it's still uncertain of how much this karma system is going to matter. The only thing I forgot to mention was apparently you get worse and worse gear as a scav, and possibly you will be marked as cursed and tagged. So AI scavs, raiders, bosses, they will come and hunt you down. But again, we don't have the exact numbers because all this information is so new, and BSG has decided to delay the specifics of the patch notes. All right, another significant change would be the weight system. So it has been, I guess, nerfed even more than previously. So now I believe the numbers are, they used to be 35, 40, and then 45. So if you went over 35, you entered a encumbered state where you would slowly drain stamina. And then as soon as you hit 40, it would be like a more significant penalty. And then when you hit 45, you just couldn't sprint. You would just be crawling. Now they've reduced that to, the numbers are 30, I believe. I've seen 25, so we're not sure on that. But, sorry, not 25, 28. But regardless, it's what I think it is 30, 35, and 40. So now when you hit 30, you start becoming encumbered. And then when you hit 35, you start draining stamina significantly. And then 40, you just are at a snail's pace. So keep that in mind. I was playing and I had to actually, I looted a Gazelle armor that was pretty heavy, and then I had an armored rig with stuff all in my backpack, and a gun in my primary and gun in my secondary, and I just couldn't move, so I had to drop the gun, drop a few other minor things, and then I could start sprinting towards the extract. So keep that in mind. Definitely leveling strength is going to be a lot more common, but it is going to significantly impact your ability to move around the map when you carry all this loot. So bushes have been significantly changed. If you're familiar with Reserve and how there's like these bushes next to the buildings where you go through them and it slows you down, that effect has been applied to every bush. And in addition, you can't prone in bushes anymore. So this is a pretty big change. It's pretty interesting. We'll see how it plays out in the meta. But definitely something to be aware of. The other thing we'll talk about is the optics rework. So some of the optics, in my opinion, got improved. Some of them got completely destroyed, like the PKA06, for example. The Cobra seems to got improved. I haven't really seen a whole lot of the optics, nor tested them myself. It's hard to say if this is a buff to optics or a nerf to optics. I guess it kind of depends on what you like and what you prefer. So next, let's talk about the factory expansion and the scav boss Tagilla and what his loot means for the meta. So his chest rig is a armored rig. It's class 6 and it has a total of 6 2x1 slots in it. Now, it's not as good as a slick. The slick is made up of the slick has 80 points, and its material isn't as good as the Tagilla's AVS plate carrier. But when you do the math, the slick is still just slightly better. You also get a little bit less on the penalties like movement speed and turn rate. Also, you get the ability to choose your own rig. So it's definitely a good piece of armor, but it's not going to replace the in-game armor by any means. However, talking about what we talked about earlier about the flea market, how that's been increased to level 20, going to farm Tagilla to get his class 6 armor is going to be a very viable strategy for early wipe. He is pretty strong, and from my testing, if you get him in an open area, you can sort of bait out his melee attacks and he will miss you. He did hit me once in the arm and it blacked my arm, but I think as long as he doesn't hit you in the chest, you'll probably be fine. So let's talk about his welder's mask. So it is a class 5 mask. It goes onto your face slot, if you will. You can't wear a helmet with it, but it covers everything on your head hitbox. So like the nape, the top of your head, your jaws, your eyes, your ears even. And it's all class 5. But it only has 40 durability. When you compare it to an Alton, let's say, the Alton has 2 separate parts, assuming you have the face visor with it. And the face visor has its own separate durability, whereas this is all meshed into one as 40. So it is sort of a downgrade in that regard. However, the interesting part is currently, at least last time I tested it, you could wear ears pieces like headphones. So if that's the case, it may be something to consider late game wise. Definitely early game, I think it's going to be really good. Sort of like a mini Alton in a way. It's an interesting one. I think it's pretty good. All of his gear seems pretty good for the most part. And then the other change we'll talk about is the weapon malfunction change, I guess you could say. Now, it's something that it seems to me, it's not going to affect you that much early wipe, maybe on the scav run, because essentially scavs spawn in with like 50% durability guns. But there is stats on the weapons and the ammo, some of the ammo, right? So it's a stat called durability burn, and essentially it's a modifier that increases whenever you fire the weapon. It eats out a percentage of the weapon's durability, right? And what they've seemed to done with like their general rule or like their idea of implementing this is the more penetration the gun does, or I guess maybe even the more damage the gun does, or sorry, the bullets rather, it has a larger durability modifier applied to it, right? I did some testing and I fired like 200 rounds of 9mm ammo out of a SMG with like a silencer on it. because also silencers and some muzzle devices affect the durability burn stat. Silencers apply more of a burn to it, and I couldn't get any jams. I have yet to get one, and I'm level 7, I think I am. So I don't really see it being a big thing. It's probably going to be one of those like really annoying things that happens every once in a while, as long as you repair your guns. And perhaps maybe what we'll see towards once you start progressing further in the game, when you get some of the more high pin ammos, they have like really large durability. I think I've seen one that had a durability burn of like 140%. And most of the ones I've seen now are like the highest I think I've seen is like 50%. But penalty applied to the bullet. And again, like when you shoot one bullet, it maybe does nothing. So, and when I shot like a whole mag, it did, I want to say like 0.7 out of my SMG. So I really don't think this is going to be a big thing. We'll have to see as we sort of further progress. And maybe when we get the actual patch notes, we'll be able to like draw some conclusions. But for right now, I don't think it's going to significantly impact your gameplay. There's also 2 new skills, one being troubleshooting and the other being weapon maintenance. It seems that the weapon maintenance, as you level it up, it reduces the burn, the durability burn on your gun, and also has to do with how often you need to repair it. Again, I really don't think this is going to largely affect early on in the wipe, perhaps later in the wipe, whenever we have access to higher tier ammo, higher tier mods that burn our weapons faster. Maybe we'll see an impact and jams and whatnot. But as I don't think it's a big change, but just wanted to include that in there. So that's kind of my thoughts on the patch as far as like meta changes and how it will affect your gameplay. If you want to see more content like this, be sure to subscribe to the channel. Also, down in the description below, I have a link to the Scav Talk podcast where me and a fellow content creator, Gigabeef, do a show every Friday where we discuss Tarkov and talk about the game and changes and upcoming updates and whatnot. So be sure to check that out. It's available on YouTube, Spotify, and most podcast platforms. Other than that, that's all I got for now, guys, and see you next time.